Hello, fifth line. Welcome back to the third video of 3 in the profile playlist about the line 5, the Heretic. So this is for you if you are a 5-1, a 5-2, a 2-5, or a 3-5 profile in human design. We're building on the first 2 videos where we talked about the heretic and what is a heretic, what is a stranger of consequence, and the projection field. So if you haven't watched those videos, I'll put the link to the profile playlist there so you can watch those videos first and then come back and watch this video. And if we haven't met, I'm Karen. I work with multi-dimensional, energetically aware leaders to help them get really clear about who they are and how to bring that into form. So if you want to get to know me more, check out the Grid Network for Light Leaders, where I lead a community on Facebook. It's free and it's a perfect place for leaders like yourself. One of the keynotes for the fifth line is the savior. So people are looking to the 5 to provide them with a solution in some way, to give them something. And in many cases, you as a fifth line will be very well equipped to provide solutions and to be the savior. You will actually really know exactly what people need and how to give it to them. You actually will have the solutions, and that's what you're here for. You're really great at that. So it's meant to be this way. It's meant to be that people project onto you to bring solutions, and that you have the solutions, and that you bring the solutions, and that you are the leader and you are the one. It's supposed to be that way. So it's not something that you should shy away from. However, it is important that you protect your reputation. People are naturally going to be a little bit wary of you as a fifth line because they look at you and they're like, should I believe this person? Kind of skepticism about fifth lines where people will be unsure about whether or not to give you their following, like to believe in your leadership.
Like another time we were assembling a fence that had to put metal sleeves over top of a smaller sleeve, and we're out in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing to support these things on. And the crew is like, oh, we can't do this. And I said, well, let's heat up the larger metal pipe and we'll expand the metal and it'll slide over the smaller one. Of course, that's not going to work. That's ridiculous. We're up on the side of a mountain, you know. So it worked, and those fences are still there 25 years later. So it's just funny that it works out in the end, but it's not always accepted at all. It's not just like, oh, great, you know, here it is. There's always a little bit of begrudgingly like grumbling that goes along with it.
So your reputation really matters. And the moment you do get burned at the stake, now you have more evidence in the world that you are not to be trusted. So the more that, I mean, obviously some of that will be out of your control, especially now that we're in this internet age. But what you can do is to stay true to yourself. And that's the most important thing for you to do, reputation-wise, is to make sure that you are following your own guidance and your own truth. In human design language, that is called strategy and authority. Strategy has to do with what is your type, whether you are a generator, a manifesting generator, a projector, or a reflector. And then authority, the 3 main ones are emotional authority, sacral, or splenic. So following your strategy, your type's strategy, and your authority is what will protect you and keep you engaging in the situations where you will be able to fulfill your role, basically.
So one of the ways when I've been guided away from situations where a person I could feel that sense of that projection field, like I need this from you. I want you to save me. And I'm a mentor. I'm a educator. I'm a facilitator of consciousness. So I do a lot of work with people. And sometimes that happens where someone wants me to be their mentor. At least that's what they think they want. But really, what they want is a savior. And I can feel it very strongly, like just this energetically, it shows up as a grasping kind of energy. And a like, I would just love to take my head and put it over there, and you just give me all the answers. Just give me all the answers. I would love that. Can you just give me all the answers? And when I was younger, before I started doing this professionally, I was inclined to do that. If somebody asked a question, I felt that I was not being helpful if I had an answer and I had insight and I had wisdom and I did not offer it to them. It felt very selfish. At this point, I believe in sacred selfishness. And I also believe in being very clear on when my on-duty light is on. And so when my on-duty light is not on, I simply observe the person. And if I'm going to interact with them at all, I'm simply giving them questions. They'll give me a question and then I'll give them one back. So what does that mean to you? How do you feel about that? And so it's always returning them back to themselves. So the way I deal with the projection field is to become a mirror. It's like, let me just flip it back around to you. And so if you think I'm beautiful or amazing or powerful, then you see you that way. And it kind of prevents a lot of people from hating me because no one wants to hate themselves. So it has that kind of benefit to it.
Darn it. I do a lot of savior stuff, finding that person stuck in the underdog position and really going for it and trying to help them out to my detriment. So I have to say my inner authority kicking in to stop me from being the savior has only happened. I'm now almost 60 in the last 2 or 3 years. And it's mostly around my daughter having to learn her own hard lessons without me being her savior. But so it's taken me a while to get into the place of not saving people. So that's a really good lesson and a long one in the making. I'll tell you that.
I have to put a boundaries to what I am willing to provide. Because maybe I can, but maybe I don't enjoy it and I don't want to do it. Do I really want to do this? Yes or no? Because it can take up and suck up a lot of my time and energy.
I do something that is, it's probably different. I don't see a lot of women who are who do what I do at the level that I do it, doing it. Most women, it seems like they separate themselves way far away. And I try to do that, but it just doesn't resonate for me. It doesn't feel good. So I stopped trying to do it. And I said, I like being around people, and I'll go forward, lean in, and be very present. And then I'll just lean back when it's time to lean back. And then, I'll be gone for a few days and then I'll lean back in and okay. And yeah, and then lean back out. And that feels really good to me. And it's not depleting at all. But if I try to stay away, like that model has been set by so many leaders to like, the bigger you get, when you're scaling, you should step away so people will value you. And, I don't think that's really necessary. I think you just have to have good boundaries, and then you won't need to, because you can be present and still have your present and contained at the same time.
A moment that my intuition guided me away from a situation where I could have been the savior happens when I'm not able to do anything to benefit the outcome of what happened. I mean, 2 weeks ago, when my friend and I were driving back to his house to check if the garage door was open, and there was a lady riding down a hill towards us, and I was talking to my friend, so I wasn't really paying attention, but she fell on her bike and was unresponsive on the ground. So my friend reacts correctly, and he's like, whoa, look at what just happened there, and we got to save this person. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is one of those things that I have to be really aware of what's happening here, because this is probably the time that I should actually be a savior. And his comment to me was like, yeah, you're you have at it, Rory. I was like, you're up. That's what he said. He said, you're up, Rory. So in my mind, I went straight into like, okay, make sure my friend puts his vehicle in park. And then because the person was unresponsive, the best thing to do is you don't move anyone. So in my mind, I was like, oh, this is great. You know, I don't have to do anything. I can basically just stand here and maybe check their pulse, and he's going to call the ambulance. But when I got over to them, they weren't breathing, which is a very rare occurrence. I've only ever seen it a couple of times, and both times it's been with people who have fallen with their head downhill, and they're in a position that they're probably got the wind knocked out of them and they just couldn't get that next breath. So that was a good example of me reacting correctly and having an opportunity where I was the savior, because I didn't have to do anything. I just changed the position of her head and then held her neck so that she was having an adequate airway, and then everything was fine. We just waited for the ambulance. But there's been 3 other instances where, unfortunately, they all have to do with accidents, that I've watched things occur and have not responded at all because I couldn't do anything about it. And that was the one that I thought about this morning, was seeing a person on their bicycle hit at high speed, and the people beside me reacted as you should, as people believe that they should, and that is to save someone. And the lady ran out of her car and her children were following her, and then she realized, oh, this is not what I should react to. So there was a whole other, in her world, there's a whole other world, a whole other circumstance that occurred, that she was protecting her children from this thing that had happened. And she also was protecting herself by protecting her children. So they all went back to the car. But at that point, I decided well before that, I was like, I'm not stopping for this at all. It's not a survivable situation. And just drove around it. Same thing happened with Steve driving past his best friend at the side of the highway. And I said, I'm sorry, Steve, I can't stop. And it's years later that he, you know, we did talk about it at the time, but it's years later that he really accepted that, yeah, that was one of those times that if we had stopped there, it would have compounded the situation. It actually, in both those situations, I think me being there would have made it worse for the people in the situation, or it would have, or in the first instance, it would have been detrimental to myself.
I am very cautious these days about entering into situations where I would need to be the savior. And that's where my strategy and authority has really helped me out with that. I can tell you of times in my past, pre-human design, where I entered into situations where people expected me to be the savior. And sometimes I could, and sometimes I couldn't. And it was very palpable in my massage career, where I cultivated a presence of being an expert in a certain type of massage that nobody else was doing, that got people out of pain. And people would come to me, usually through word of mouth, and they would expect me to fix them and to, in a sense, save them from their pain. And sometimes I could, and sometimes I couldn't. For the most part, I was pretty clear about when I couldn't, and pretty direct about referring and, you know, doing all those things professionally that I needed to do to get those people to where they could really get help. So I saved myself a lot of damage to my reputation that way.
Well, working with Ski Patrol, I definitely did have a reputation of an odd intuition of showing up for situations that were causing other people anxiety and making it a lot easier for them. And some of those things are, I think a lot of it just has to do with, I was given freedom of movement, and there is something to say about intuition guiding you towards stuff, because after doing this for 30 years, it seems impossible that I didn't end up in some places without some sort of unconscious force guiding me there. Some of those instances seem to occur. I make choices to go places that I realize are not necessarily choices formed with words in my mind. I just move through space. And it's my job to be there for people. And so I'm there for people. I'm not quite sure how it goes about, but it does work quite well. And it's really rewarding for me. I love those stories. Like they mean the world to me. They're like, oh, well, that's like vindication that I'm doing the right thing, even though I have no idea what I'm doing. It's just part of the game. Part of the journey.
I seem to be thinking of like a time where if you can tell me this story, like there was something happening and then you just like emerged from the trees.
Oh, okay. There was an unusual accident that had happened where it wasn't a serious accident. It was just someone that had with a leg injury, but the patrollers couldn't find them. And because I work snow safety and avalanche work, I was actually out of bounds doing a snow profile for evaluating the stability of the snowpack. And I was listening to the patrollers looking for this person. And they'd gone on all the runs on that side of the mountain, and they'd found a witness at the bottom and had gone up, and the person was like, yeah, they were like yelling here, and they still can't find them. And they're like, well, that must be the person that's hurt. And now there's no one there. And so I thought, well, if I come back to the ski resort, I just took the most straight line that I could. And I went under the boundary and cut across runs through the trees, bushwhacking and pushing branches out of my way. And it was actually just to get to the lift so I could go back up. And I came through the trees at the spot that the person was laying. And I think the reason that they couldn't hear that person is there's just a little bit of wind that had come up, and they were in a little bit of a hollow. And so I showed up and I said, oh, I found this person. And the other patrollers, although they were really happy that I was there and it had solved this for them, they were actually quite upset because they were like, well, we've been calling, looking for this person for quite a while. Where were you? You weren't on the lift. No one saw you at the top. And so where did you come from? And I think someone actually went and looked at my tracks of where I'd come from to get to this point, to find this person. And that was definitely just a happenstance, but it was intuition because I didn't have to go back there. In fact, it was very inconvenient to take that route back. I could have disappeared and not done anything and ended up on another mountain in 5 minutes. But it's like, no, there's some reason that I'm compelled to head back, and maybe that's because I'm going to find this person. Yeah.
Rory is a longtime friend of mine, and it has been really amazing over the years witnessing how he follows his truth about what situations to enter into and what situations not to enter into. Especially as a ski patroller, we used to ski together so much. And I watched how he would sometimes just not answer calls and not go into certain situations where his intuition was just telling him no. But on the other hand, like so often he responded, and he was truly known all throughout his entire career as someone who would come on scene and who would always provide the solutions and who would work in an amazing way. Like, people loved it when he arrived because they would just be like, oh, Rory's here, it's going to be handled. Because he really was and is the savior. He's great at what he does, and he's really good at providing solutions. Because of that, he naturally always ended up in a leadership role in his career. And there seemed to be like a certain amount of people that were not happy with that. But then, his reputation and how he stayed in integrity with himself allowed him to thrive nonetheless. So beautiful, Fifth Line. I really hope that this video series has helped you to feel your own potential for power and leadership and for truth, And just to know that whatever it is that is your perspective, and that you are here to universalize, to share, this is your time, this is your lifetime to be in that role, and don't shy away from it. Let yourself enter into the role of leader. You have the greatest potential of all of the lines to create huge amounts of success and power in this world, especially in this day and age of the internet. So I actually have an amazing masterclass if you have a lot of resistance to social media. It's called Beyond the Sidelines of Social Media. I'll put the link to it below. It's really an energetic activation that is intended to dissolve resistance to sharing yourself on social media. So if you're a fifth line who's in hiding, definitely check that out. I also offer incredible readings. They're called Energetic Architecture Clarity Sessions. I'll put the link below, and I am so grateful that you've been here with me. If you didn't check out the video that I did with Namaste about how to be a projection ninja, definitely check that out. It was so good. I'll put the link there for you. And I will see you again soon here on my channel. So much love. Go be a leader. Bye.